There are plenty of easy formulas in Excel, like sum and average. And then there are lookups, and lookups definitely have a learning curve. I don't want to scare you off. We're going to practice, all the ins and outs of lookups throughout this course, but I want to be real with you. Okay. So as you're struggling with the formulas later, I want you to remember that they are worth it. I promise. So in this very first video, let's start with the why behind lookups. And here are the three main reasons. Okay. So reason number one is that lookups help us connect tables. So let's say you've got a table or a data set with demographic data, and then in a separate location, like elsewhere on your sheet, or in a different sheet, or in a different Excel file, you've got test score data. Lookups are the formulas that help us combine them into a single contiguous data set that then we can use for formulas and pivot tables later. Okay, so let's pretend that the data sets look like this, right? So the demographic data set might have tons of variables. One of them would be like primary language. And then over here, we've got test scores with the English language assessment scores. And then that's what lookups do, right? They help us combine everything. They're not easy. That's why we have a whole entire course about them. Look at all this stuff, all this jargon, and every single comma, dollar sign, parentheses, everything has to be in the exact right spot. Otherwise, it doesn't work. All right. Reason number two behind lookups is they help us objectively look at patterns across the data sets or topics. Now, I know you can zigzag your eyes back and forth, and you could say, okay, person number one, well, their primary language is English. So, oh, here they are here. And yeah, 90% correct. That sounds high. Okay, that makes sense. And then here's person two, also an English speaker. And here they are again, 95%. Okay, that feels like relatively high. That is subjective. We're not doing anything subjective. Data is supposed to be methodical and logical and objective. So by having the combined data set, we can objectively compare min scores, max scores, average scores by language, not just looking at one data set, not just looking at another, but looking at patterns across them. Okay, this is not a pivot table bootcamp. This is a lookup bootcamp. So I'm just going to do a super quick pivot table to show you how this combined data set helps us. So I'm going to insert a brand new pivot table on a new sheet. And then let's do some quick dragging and dropping. So let's say you want to look at the average test scores. Okay. Let me turn this into an average real quick, like that. And let me make it a percentage so that my eyes don't bleed by all the decimals. Okay. So overall, the average is a 73. But then we can do a breakout by language because they're in the same table. And we could see, okay, the English speakers, well, yeah, that makes sense. Their average is a 94. And then the Portuguese speakers, yeah, their average obviously would be lower. English is not their primary language, like duh, it's a 47. Let me filter out the unknowns because that was only a person. All right. And then because these are combined and they have one summary table, you could easily graph them. You could make a bar chart or a column chart and compare the average scores side by side. You can't do this unless you first combine the data sets with lookups. The combined data set is the foundation of basically everything else that's really interesting and really juicy and really helpful and useful in data analysis and data viz. All right, so the third reason about why lookups is they are faster and they are so much more accurate than just copying and pasting. So in our demographic data set, do you see how we're missing person three? The ID numbers don't go in order. That's super annoying, but it's also super normal. To have partial data sets, that happens all the time in every single real life project. And then look over here, who are we missing? We're missing person seven. They're not there. Maybe they were sick and they didn't take the test that day or whatever. But over here, let me delete these lookups and show you how annoying this would be. You'd have to say, okay, here's person one and two, copy, paste, and then person three, okay, they're missing. So you type in like unknown or missing. And then here's person 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Let me copy and paste. That would take all day. And I know I would make a typo because, I get a new email or my kids would knock on the door. So I would have the normal distractions that all of us humans have, and I would absolutely make a copy paste mistake. Now this pretend training data set, we've got 10 pretend people, but in real life, you might have 100 people, 1,000 people, you might have 1,000,000 people. Those are normal size data sets, and copying and pasting, you would literally lose like an entire workday. So lookups require a learning curve because there's so many commas and parentheses and everything, but they are worth it, I promise.